Good evening. This is Corey Golub, Kilo Uniform 1 Uniform. This evening I have with us Vance Martin, November 3 Victor Echo Mike in Pennsylvania, who is involved with Pota, Parks on the Air, and he is going to tell us all about that program. Thanks for joining us.
You bet. Yeah, thanks for the intro, and I'll just do a quick introduction of myself before I jump right in. So like Corey said, November 3 Victor Echo Mike is my call sign, and I've been involved with the Parks on the Air program pretty much since its inception. The Parks on the Air was an outgrowth of ARRL's 2016 event. So when that was wrapping up, Jason, who got Pota as we know it today up and running, had gathered together a bunch of us that were somewhat technical folks so that we could get a system up and running. So that's kind of why I'm here representing Pota, is I know all the ins and outs of the history since kind of the dawn of time. So I'll jump in. We'll buzz through some stuff. For people who are familiar with Pota, some of this will be information you already know, but hopefully there's some good nuggets in here too for folks that have been in the program before, because there are some new things that have happened recently in Pota that I'll also share this evening. So jumping in, first to explain what Pota is. So Parks on the Air is actually a 501c3 radio sport program. So it is a registered nonprofit, so that we can basically all go out and have fun in parks with our radios. So there's a large number of parks in the program that you can go out and activate. So we encourage people to participate either as a park activator or a park chaser. I'll explain what that means in a little bit. And then also in 2021, just within the last couple months, we also launched a brand new website, pota.app, to really make it even easier to keep track of your progress in the program. So Pota, like I said, I've been involved since the inception of the program, and basically we started out as a very small group of US-based volunteers who essentially created the rules, the infrastructure, the database, and then over time, more volunteers joined to help coordinate call areas and social media and things like that. Then really just within the last 2 months, due to growth, we also started a volunteer support desk. So we have a Pota technical support available essentially 7 days a week now. And outside of just those initial volunteers, really Pota is now everybody who participates in the program. So there's over 15,000 registered users from all over the world, and that number really grows every day. So that's kind of the history and where we came from. So if you want to join Pota, obviously at its core, Pota is about going out into parks with your radio gear and having fun. But if you want to use the website and all the features that are available for you, creating accounts is pretty quick and easy. We don't actually store any passwords, so if you're very security minded, we actually use essentially some services available via AWS, so we don't have to know passwords or anything like that. So it's real easy to sign up, and everything's very secure because of those services. But basically you go to pota.app and click sign up to get your account created. So once you have an account, really the first thing that most folks want to know is, where are all of these parks, and where can I go activate to play radio? So from pota.app in the menu, there's a number of ways to get to maps, but if you go to the menu and go to maps, you can search around and see where all the references are. So obviously, since we're in Maine virtually this evening, well, some of you for real, me virtually, I pulled up Maine on the map here, so you can see there's a fair number of parks scattered all across Maine that are available for folks to go and activate and play radio in. There's also a large number of DX parks. So we've got, Japan is probably one of our most active DX entities. So if you like hunting parks, you can work parks all over the world too. Some of the newer countries joining just recently, Portugal and the Netherlands have joined, and Spain has actually been with us for a little bit. So Pota, even though it started out as mostly a US program, it has really grown worldwide at this point. So I've used the term activate earlier. So when we say activate a park, really all we mean is going out to a park, setting up your radio, and making contacts. So really the only key things you need in order to activate a park is basically, your license, any radio, any antenna, any way to power it up, and then at the end of the day, any logging program that you can use to generate a standard ADIF file. So some people log on paper and then enter it into a logger when they get home. Some people like to take their loggers portable with them. But really from an equipment standpoint, that's all you need. And then obviously just, be ready to have fun, because it's a blast when you get out in a park. One of the most common questions when we talk about activating a park that we get from new folks is, it's almost always around equipment. Like, what's the best radio to have? What's the best antenna to have? And my standard answer to that question is the best radio and the best antenna is whatever radio and antenna you own. One of the best parts about activating a park is that essentially everybody's coming to you. So as the activator, you don't have to have the most efficient equipment in the world, because you don't have to break through the pileup. The pileup is coming to you. So as long as you have a radio that can put RF into a piece of wire, you should be good to go. So that's really all you need initially to get yourself ready to activate. And then when we use the term activate, we often talk about a successful activation. So we consider your activity an activation once you've made 10 QSOs in any one UTC day. So because Pota is worldwide, the UTC day is kind of what we use as our marker. So 10 contacts within one UTC day while inside the boundaries of a park is really what makes an activation qualify. One of the things that we do often recommend is we do recommend staying in the general portions of the band when you're activating. If you're an extra, you can obviously go into the extra portion, but you're going to get a lot more business if you stay in the general portions of the band, especially as you get started. One of the greatest things about Pota as we were setting up and getting rolling, we really wanted it to be about having fun. So we didn't create complex rules around, having to have a specific exchange or exchanging serial numbers and things like that. You will usually hear people exchanging reference numbers. So that's what we call our parks, K-3287. But that's actually not a requirement. Any contact you make from within a park, you can submit the log, and that counts. So really the only thing that you're required to log is what you're essentially required to log just for standard contact stuff. So date, time, band, mode, and that's really all you need. As you get experienced in Pota, there's some additional fields that we recommend you log, like park numbers and things like that. But really, to get yourself up and rolling, just the basic log is all that you need. And then at the end of your activation, you just send your logs to the email address that matches the number of your call sign. So we have emails set up, K1, K2, K3, up K0 up through K9 at parksontheair.com. So, I'm N3VEM, so I'd send mine to K3 at parksontheair.com. And in that email, we usually say, just include in either the file name or the email, hey, I was in this park. And that's really all there is to it. Get out there, have some fun, make some contacts, and send the login when you're done. Before I jump to the next slide here, aside from just the mechanics of getting on the air, for folks that are new to it, there can often be a little bit of kind of like mic shyness. How do I call CQ when I'm doing a Pota activation, and what do I say? So on this next slide, we're going to take just a brief minute, and we're going to listen to basically I think it's like a 1.5-minute blurb of somebody basically doing just that. They sat down, set up, called CQ, made a contact. So for the new folks in the crowd or watching this video at a later date, this will really give you a good idea of what an activation and hunting sounds like.
Low CQ, CQ Pota, CQ Parks on the air. from Kilo 8 Hotel, Quebec, activating K3331. The Waterloo Rec area in southern Lower Michigan, calling CQ and standing by. Hello CQ, CQ Pota, CQ Parks on the air, Kilo 8 Hotel, Quebec, activating K3331 at Waterloo Rec area, southern Michigan, CQ and standing by.
Victor Echo 3, Zulu November.
Oh, that's a signal. Hi Kurt, Victor Echo 3, Zulu November, plus 30 in the 3331.
Yeah, you're about plus 28, 25. Great signal, Chris. Thanks for 3331 again.
Yeah, you betcha. Hey, thanks for chasing. I got 2 more to go after this, Kurt, so keep an eye out. 73.
73, we'll be listening, B3ZN.
Clear with Kurt and QRZ from Kilo 8 Hotel, Quebec. Kilo Bravo.
All right. So there's just a real quick example of, somebody setting up and activating. So like I mentioned before, you'll often hear people exchanging park numbers, but that's technically not a requirement. So if you happen to be in a park doing, some other radio activity, with a club, or if, your club sets up for field day and you happen to go out to a park, those are all, valid contacts to submit to Pota. So basically get out there and have fun. One of the things that you might have picked up in that exchange there is the people who are the very active hunters and activators. Even though Pota's gotten very large, it does still have a very like a small community feel. So you'll hear similar call signs, and you'll hear exchanges like that pretty often, where the people recognize each other, and there's often a little bit of banter that goes back and forth when there's time and folks are exchanging signals. So that's really what it's all about when you get out there. Now, to help yourself when you're out, to kind of like, bait the hook, we do have a fairly robust spotter set up for Parks on the Air. So when you go to pota.app, the front page that you go to is actually the spotting page, so you can see who's on the air. You can easily add spots. If you know you're going to go out to a park at a later date, you can click the button to add activations, and it's just real basic, pop-up forms that you fill out to do your spotting. One of the things that a lot of folks know now, but not everybody realizes just yet, if you are a CW activator, if you schedule your activation ahead of time, and if you do SOTA does this same thing too, but if you schedule your activation ahead of time on our website, if the reverse beacon picks you up, we basically skim the reverse beacon network. So if we see that you have a scheduled activation and we see that the reverse beacon network has picked you up, we will actually spot you automatically, which is really nice if you're going to do CW and you're going somewhere remote where there's no cell phone signal. You just schedule it ahead of time and get out there and call your CWCQ and you'll get picked up. So one of the little bonuses. Now, if you're not already into portable activation, some of the things that really make it worth it are when you're out in parks, unless you're in an urban park, but if you're in a park, out in the woods or something like that, there's typically a much lower noise floor, so it's a real good way to get out and do radio without all the, kind of man-made noise that we're accustomed to dealing with at our homes nowadays. And each activation can have a lot of unique challenges. So Pota can be as simple as, setting up in a parking lot, or as complex as, hiking down a trail and setting up somewhere else. So you can really make it what you want it to be. So, the challenges can be basically none to, if you really like to rough it, the terrain, space, weather, all of those things can become factors. So it's, you can make what you want of an activation. One of the other great things with portable activation for folks that are into emergency communications, it's a great way to get regular practice setting up your equipment in less than ideal situations. So it's a good activity for those folks too. And then, like I said earlier, really the pileup comes to you. So you become the DX, and that's really exciting. If you've never experienced the operator end of a pileup. It's a lot of fun activating a park. One of the other things that it makes Pota great for many folks is because there are so many parks in the system. A lot of folks that do Pota are also in DeSoto, but if you happen to live in a part of the country where there's not a lot of mountains, SOTA peaks can be hard to find. So Pota is great for that because it's very accessible. Most people live within an hour or two of their closest park, so you don't generally have to travel too far to get out to a park and activate. And then one of the other things that we always remind people is we accept logs from any date and time. So if you were out at a park sometime in the past and you're just now learning about Pota, you can feel free to send logs from when you were in a park in 2016. If you were out activating parks for the National Parks on the Air event, you can feel free to submit those logs. So it's really about having fun. So there's very few rules and restrictions outside of, for activators being inside the bounds of the park when you make your contacts, and for hunters, really the only requirement is to make a contact with the activators. And there's a lot of awards too. So if you're a wallpaper chaser, there's a what I call a standard set of awards, which are the things that basically just count numbers of activations. So there's basically a whole series of medals. So bronze, silver, gold, platinum. I even forget what all they are. But then there's a lot of other fun awards too. We have some park-to-park awards. There's awards that encourage people to go back to the same park over and over again. So if you only have one park near you, there's actually special awards you can get for activating the same entities certain numbers of times. We've also partnered with, I forget the ham's name. There's a ham in South Africa who came up with the radar concept. So we've partnered with him to do radar awards within Pota. So basically that's kind of like the equivalent of a rover award. So the idea with radar is that you make a certain number of contacts, you move a certain minimum distance, you make another certain number of contacts, you move a minimum distance. So that can be a lot of fun if you're into the challenge of like portable, quick setup and tear down type operating. And the distances traveled actually varies by how you travel. So if you're in a car, we make you travel further than if you're traveling by foot and things like that. So that's a fun one that's available. All right, so on the hunter side, so far I've mostly talked about activating in parks on the air. So the other great part with Pota is that you have the equivalent of, so if you're a SOTA person, you've heard of the term shack sloth. So that's kind of the person that sits and hunts SOTA summits. So in parks on the air, we just call the people contacting the activators hunters. And for hunters, it's even easier to participate. Basically you go to the website, create an account, make contacts with the people that you hear activating parks. We encourage you to spot the people that you hear just so that other hunters know that the activators are out there. And that's really all there is to it. For Pota, again, because it's really about the spirit of fun, we don't actually require hunters to submit logs. All of the stats and things that are tracked are based off of the logs that the activators submit. So as you start making contacts with activators and they start uploading their logs, you'll start to see numbers pop into your dashboard at either parksontheair.com and clicking through, or going directly to pota.app. So there's a lot of neat stuff there. And if we have time at the end and there's any questions, I can get into more detail with some of those things. As a hunter, some of the real benefits are just knowing that you're helping somebody else reach their goals. So the activators go through a lot of effort to get out to parks and set up. So just making a quick contact really helps them. It's a great activity for new hams. So if you're new to HF, it's a very easy, short contact generally. Usually it's just a quick, hey, I can hear you in Pennsylvania, you're good 5.9 signal, and they'll give a park number, and that's pretty much it. So if you're if you're new, if you have a little bit of mic fright, it's a great way to make a contact without, kind of the obligation of a long extended conversation. I know when I was new, the idea of, hey, I might end up in a long-winded conversation, made me very nervous at first. But so this is a great way to get into the hobby and get over those initial mic fright things. The stats that you can get to when you go to Pota.app are very comprehensive too. So if you're a numbers person and you like tracking stats, there's a lot of fun stuff there that you can do also. And then really just the camaraderie. You heard it in the contact we listened to. People get to know each other. People start making plans to meet each other at parks and stuff like that. So there was actually recently a group of folks that planned a trip to Alaska together so that they could get up to Alaska and activate. So it's a great way to make new friends. For hunters, if you're wanting to know, like, hey, what can I do? How can I be really successful as a hunter? Really, the easiest things to do is just check the website regularly. Jump on Pota.app, look at the schedule, see who's planning on being out. You can follow along on social media. Pota has presence on Facebook. A bunch of us are also on Twitter. There's a Slack group, so it's real easy to jump in and chat and see who's going where when. And then the spotter. Obviously you can watch that on any day of the week. There's usually a fair number of people on the air, even if you just jump on and look. When I check, looking right now, it looks like there's about 20 different people on the air, even on a Thursday night. So really it's just about, getting your radio turned on and making the contacts. From the hunter side, there's also a bunch of hunter awards available. So most of the awards that we have for activators, there are mirror awards for the hunters available. So there's, standard sets of awards as you work more and more numbers of parks. There's awards to encourage you to, again, contact the same parks certain numbers of times and things like that. So there's just a lot of fun to be had all around. From challenges, the challenges that are out there, we often talk about, the solar conditions and things like that and gear failure issues, but really as an activator, it doesn't have to be super challenging, and that's what's great. The things that could be a problem are pretty easy to anticipate. So, check the weather before you go. Make sure you're not going to get caught in the rain. Make sure you have some spare batteries in case any of your gear fails, and then really just get out there and have fun. We do like to share some tips, especially for first-time activators. If you're planning on going out to a park and you haven't yet, make sure you keep safety in mind. These are public parks, so we just say, hey, remember not to drag anything around that could be a tripping hazard or cause problems for anybody else who's out enjoying the park. And we want to make sure that we have a good image for Pota. We don't want to be the one that injures another park goer because we had, a coax stretched across a walkway or something like that. And then really just kind of keep a running checklist. As you do it more and more often, you get used to, the types of things that you need, the types of things that you don't need. So really just keeping a running list of equipment, things to pack, and having stuff set up and ready to go is really the name of the game. A lot of the other things, listed here are pretty standard portable operating, good practices. The things that, kind of the extra things that we list because we've all forgotten. So this picture here is Tom. Tom has, I wish I could remember the brand of headlamp he has, but he looks like a motorcycle coming down the highway when he walks around with that thing on. But bug repellent is one that I often recommend. I used to travel a lot for work, so I activated all over the country, and I can tell you that activating in the Florida Everglades at dusk when the mosquitoes are coming out is 100% unpleasant if you don't have bug spray on. So I learned that the hard way. So make sure you have bug spray. I know up in Maine you guys have those, I don't know what you call them, but those flies that are like, the size of my thumb, I think I've encountered up there. So bug spray is a good thing to have. sunscreen, maps, all the standard kind of safety stuff are good things to have.
Deer flies are bad up here.
Deer flies, that's what they're called.
Deer flies and horse flies.
Yep, yeah, I know. Well, making trips up there, I've encountered some of those big flies that you have, and some of them, and it's probably the deer flies, I feel like they actually chase your car down the road, so, yeah. One of the other fun things that Pota does that is, I'm going to say relatively new, but we've actually been doing, we just did our fourth year of it, is the annual plaque event. So once a year in the summer, in conjunction with Pota, we do a plaque event where we have a certain number of categories, and after the logs are submitted for the 2-day weekend, we actually have, I think we're up to 11 plaques that we give out. So there's plaques for most contacts for activators and hunters. There's plaques for most CW, most digital, most voice. We have a rover plaque and a chaser plaque, so if we're activating and hunting the most unique numbers of parks. And then we also have a club plaque, so if there's a group of you that likes to get out and activate together, we also give away a plaque to the club that makes the most contacts. So that's a lot of fun. That's probably the busiest weekend for Pota each year. I think during the plaque event this past year there was, I'd have to go back and double check the numbers. I think it was 20-some thousand contacts made in 2 days by activators out in parks. So it makes for a really fun event. If you have questions about that, you can always shoot me an email afterwards. But that's a blast, and the plaques are really nice. So it's a fun activity. I mentioned the growth at the beginning, so I really wanted to just throw this up here. The quote on the top of this slide is actually a quote from my 5-year-old. He heard me say it once, so now every time I talk about Pota, he likes to say, "Any time is Pota time." But I like to throw this up here just to highlight, really in the last 18 months or so, the activity in Pota has really skyrocketed. We went from averaging, maybe 10 to 20,000 contacts a month to, now you can see, June, July, August, we're up in the 150, 200,000 contacts a month being made, by activators who are out in parks. So what that means is there's almost always somebody out in the park. So if you're hunting, you can almost always find somebody to contact, or if you're activating, there's almost always people listening because there's so much activity. I talked about DX, so here at the top we actually have some numbers highlighting just the number of entities. So it's definitely not just a U.S. program. We actually have 102 different DXCC entities that have joined the fund. So worldwide there's now 33, well, you can see there, 33,622 parks all over the world for folks to activate and hunt. So really a lot of opportunity to get out there and have fun. And we have a few of the obligatory pictures here, so really just to highlight the different activating styles. So these are some pictures from activations I've done. So a lot of people like to just get out in their car in a parking lot, rent cabins that are in parks, set up your tent, just find a grassy field and set your gear up. There's really all kinds of ways to get out and enjoy Pota. If you're more hardcore, you can do like Kenji in Indonesia likes to do. He heads out with his little mountain topper CW rig and his little tents, and he'll, it's fun. You can see pictures of him on Instagram. He'll sit and have his open campfire and fry up his breakfast and be making CW contacts right there while he's at it. Brian was one of our very busy activators early on. He's very much the mobile type of person, so he goes, sticks the big mast up, and he activates quite a lot of parks that way after work. So that's another option. With Pota, you only have to make 10 contacts. So Brian, almost every day on his way home from work, he'd park at the park, throw his mast up, and make a few contacts, and then head the rest of the way home. So a lot of ways to participate. If you like interacting with folks to find out what's going on in the Pota world, like I mentioned earlier, if you're into social media, there's a lot of ways to get in touch with us and other activators. The Facebook groups and Twitter are great places to just chat with people about, making plans and how they like to participate in Pota. The Slack channel is great if you want to interact with the admin folks. So if you get on Pota Slack, we have some channels in there for community support and things like that, and that's usually where you'll find the admin folks hanging out is in Slack. And then also, more recently, you can also really just check out your favorite ham radio media outlets. So we just started up a monthly Pota update because of how popular Parks on the Air has gotten. We're now releasing basically each month just a 3-minute blurb to give an update for Parks on the Air as far as what's new for the month. So next I'll actually just share with all of you what that Pota update was for August, so you can kind of catch the official Pota news and then look for those each month moving forward if you want to stay in the loop. This is November 3, Victor Echo Mike with your month ending August 2021 Parks on the Air update. Be sure to visit parksontheair.com for more information about the program and pota.app for spotting, park information, leaderboards, and more. This month in Parks on the Air news, we have 2 exciting updates to share with everybody. First, we are excited to announce that we have recently added over 1,000 parks to the Parks on the Air system. For the last several months, we've had a small contingent of volunteers combing through user requests to add additional parks, validating that those requested parks meet the criteria for inclusion in Pota, and formatting the list so that they can be added to the system. After hundreds of volunteer hours, the lists are now in the system and ready for you to go activate. Check out the maps and search pages at pota.app to see if any of these new units are in your area. Also in Pota news, we are excited to share that we are formalizing a Parks on the Air support desk. You can always continue to get community support via the Facebook group or via the Pota Help channel in the Pota Slack group, but we have a small group of volunteers that have agreed to be on a rotating schedule to help you with your official technical support questions. To reach the official Pota support desk, all you need to do is send an email to help@parksontheair.com. We have coverage for most days of the week, so you will usually get a response within 24 hours, but no worse than 48 hours based on our volunteers' schedules. We won't solve every problem that fast, but you'll know that we're on it. Issues requiring Level 2 support are generally resolved within the week. And now for our monthly update. August was a very busy month for Parks on the Air. During the month, there were over 180,000 contacts made by about 1,200 different activators. They put nearly 3,000 parks on the air from 25 different DX entities, and all of those parks and entities were hunted by more than 23,000 different hunters. The top activators for the month were K7CAR with 3,399 QSOs and W0YES, who activated 72 different parks. The top hunter for the month was N5HA with 967 QSOs while hunting 691 different parks. In our Pota DX corner, Canada was unsurprisingly the most active entity outside of the continental United States, with 12,382 QSOs being made from parks in the Great White North. Not to be outdone, however, we had quite a bit of activity from Japan, Alaska, Puerto Rico, England, Wales, France, and many others. The top DX activators for the month were VE9MY with 1,579 QSOs and VE2NCG, who activated 26 parks. And this concludes our August 2021 Parks on the Air update. As always, the team at Parks on the Air wishes you safe activations and happy hunting. 73. All right, and that brings us to the end of the prepared materials. So I'm available to hang out all evening. So if the few of you that are here live have questions, we can open up and I can answer any questions you might have.
All right. start unmuting folks, or actually maybe you can unmute. Joe, you have a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, I do. I'm really fascinated by the Pota.app site/app. Can you tell us a little bit about how that came to be, and do you have volunteers that built that? Did you recruit an outside party to build that? How did you get the momentum behind, getting that together? It looks pretty neat.
Yeah, that was actually all in-house. So there's basically a group of like 5 or 6 of us that do all the technical work for that. So there's a couple of us, myself and Mike, that do a bunch of the back end, the database work. And then we have a couple folks who are what I would call like our cloud computing experts, who basically help with all like the AWS services that we use for all the cloud stuff that's done. And then we have a couple folks that are kind of the front end experts that basically built the front end website on top of it. So Pota.app was really the natural evolution when we first got up and running. If any of you have participated for a while, there was an original website that was, and I could probably pop some things up here, but there was an original website that was just stats.parksontheair.com, which was where all the statistics information was originally, and that was what we threw together really fast. So the old website that was very archaic looking was basically a lot of me hacking stuff together from the very little PHP that I knew. And then as we got more volunteers over time, then basically we kind of grew into the Pota.app, which is a lot more interactive, and you can really kind of poke around and spend a lot of time there. So
that's fantastic. Thank you.
Yep. And then the caveat that I always give, that I always jokingly say, but only part jokingly, is that as cool as the website is, I often tell people that if you spend more time on the website than on the radio, you're probably doing it wrong. So we built the website really to be a tool to encourage folks to get on the air. So.
I have a question about the vetting process for adding parks to the roster, giving it an actual number. Is there like a vetting process?
Yeah,
how that works?
Yeah, there is. It's now we actually just went through a big push, like you saw in the kind of our August release there. We just added about 1,000 parks to the system. So right now we've actually paused adding new parks in the U.S. because we're putting some effort into getting more of the DX parks in. We've had a number of folks reach out from some other countries, so we're trying to get some DX parks in. But the normal process is if there's a park that you think should get added to Parks on the Air, if you go to the FAQ, there is some information about what makes a park eligible, and essentially what it boils down to is it has to be either a state or federal park. But basically you send that information to your state's mapping coordinator. So at parksontheair.com, there's a list of mapping coordinators. So each state has somebody who has volunteered to basically take those requests. Then they do the vetting. So they look up the park. In some cases, they actually contact park managers to verify, is it actually a state park, a federal park, what the arrangements are. And then those folks take care of getting them added to the system. So that's essentially the process that happens.
So just to verify, no municipal parks, it's state or federal?
Yeah, it's just state and federal.
Okay.
And that's mainly just, because of quantity. Once you get below the state level, the number of parks out there is, basically becomes unmanageable. You'd be dealing with,
Right. So is there any forethought? This kind of leads to my next question. So it looks like the United States all proceeds with a K, kilo.
Yep.
What happens when you reach park number 10,000? Are you going to go to like N or A or W, or what's the plan?
We would just keep incrementing the numbers. So
okay.
We started out with 4-digit numbers, but was just an arbitrary decision. So if we get to park, 10,000, it would just be K-10,000. So
okay.
Yep. Yep.
Does anyone else have questions they'd like to ask? Go ahead, unmute yourself. Feel free to ask away. Ned or Donnie, do you have any questions on Pota? I'd love to hear them.
No questions. Great presentation. One of the things that I like about Pota is the idea of actually exploring the park and enjoying the park, and then also having, you know, the radio part of it, you know, so that you're kind of joining two things that, well, I love. You know, I love hiking and being outdoors, and I love radio. So bringing them together is win-win, you know. So I really think that's cool. I've seen a few YouTube videos of people doing that and explaining a little bit about the park, and I find it, you know, it's exciting from a radio perspective, and it's also interesting from just enjoying the outdoors. So thank you very much for your presentation. I really like that, and I really like the whole Pota concept.
Yeah, you bet. Yeah, I have to agree. The learning about the parks and exploring parks is a great part of the program, because there's, you know, there's parks that I've ended up visiting that I might not have otherwise for that, you know, that exact reason. I, you know, made contact with somebody in a park, and then I happened to be on a family vacation and said, oh, we're near that park, and I remember looking it up online, and there's, you know, such and such. So the one recently that was, no, I've not been to the park, but I went and looked it up because, you know, I thought, oh, that sounds neat. But during the Huntsville Ham Fest, there was a whole bunch of people activated a park that was near Huntsville, and so I was like, wow, there was a lot of people in that park. Why was that? So I looked it up, and I realized, oh, well, that's the park that's near Huntsville. But then reading about the park, you know, I learned that, you know, hey, they have these cabins that were built in the 1930s as part of the Civilian Conservation Corps, and so now it's kind of like on my bucket list of places to visit is, hey, I'd like to go to this park and stay in one of these, you know, Civilian Conservation Corps cabins. That looks like a lot of fun. So there's just a lot of benefit even outside of radio to it. So.
No, I know, like for me, I love lighthouses. I love activating lighthouses. It's been a while since I've done that, but with lighthouses, you have this annual event, you know, the International Lighthouse and Lightship Weekend. Is there any Pota equivalent to that? Is there like a Super Bowl of the year for one weekend where it's a Pota all-out equivalent event?
Yeah, the annual plaque event more or less kind of turns into that each year. That's when, you know, a lot of folks, the idea of winning plaques really brings a lot of people out and on the air. So if there's a single weekend that's like the big, like Super Bowl weekend, it's probably that one, and it's usually about the third weekend in July every year. We announce the official dates, you know, a couple months ahead of time, but it's pretty much always that third weekend of July. So that's the big one. And then we also have what I would call our, I don't know, maybe the equivalent of the playoffs, you know, not the Super Bowl, but each season we do a seasonal weekend that we just call Support Your Parks. So really we try to have, you know, one weekend in the fall where we just basically tell folks like, hey, here's the designated weekend. Let's all get out at the same time, and then we do one in winter and one in spring, and then you know, in summer again in conjunction with the Black event. So those are probably the busiest weekends of the year.
I believe there was a posting on the New England Division ARRL website about an upcoming New England event, so maybe that's what you're talking about. I think there's something coming up in October related to that.
I think there is a group getting together. I don't think it's an official like Pota-wide event, but there are, you know, quite a few groups will, you know, kind of get together and say like, hey, in our area, let's all get together for a certain weekend and do an event. So you'll find quite a few of those throughout the year where a group will get together and do something. Another good example of that is it's either just happened or it's happening soon. I'd have to go look at the dates, but there's a group that is gonna do a whole bunch of activations along the Appalachian Trail. So, folks will do things like that, just kind of, smaller groups, impromptu, scattered throughout the year. So.
I'm just looking at the site now. It says the K1USN Radio Club announced the first annual Autumn New England Parks on the Air event Saturday, October 16th from 0000 to 23:59 UTC. Activation from as many different POTAs as possible. The goal is to have one group or individual at each site to enable the activation of as many New England POTAs as possible. So,
very cool.
Like that's what they have coming up.
Yep. Yeah, that's always fun when kind of groups coordinate efforts. So, and then you get to do a lot of, when you do coordinated stuff like that, then you get to have fun of kind of doing the park-to-park contacts, contacting each other, one park operator to another. So.
Any last questions for Vance about POTA or anything related?
Yeah, I have a question about the park-to-park thing. I'm glad you brought that up because I was always curious about. So you get spotted on, the POTA website. You're operating on this frequency, and then you hear somebody does park-to-park. Now that other person, presumably spotted on a different frequency, did they QSY to the frequency of another known park activator? Is that how that park-to-park happened, or how does that typically happen? Just curious.
Yeah, it's usually essentially that, like the person, that was in a separate park, is also looking at the spotter and says like, oh, hey, I might be able to contact that person. The other thing that a lot of operators do when they head out to a park, because POTA is so popular and there is very often other folks in the air on parks, a lot of people's more or less like standard practice now is when they first set up their gear, they'll actually fire up the spotter, they'll look to see who else is on the air and if they can contact any of the other parks that are on the air, and then after they've gone through and done that, then they'll find a clear frequency and start calling CQ. So it's kind of a mix there, but generally one of those two things.
Oh, okay. That sounds good. Yeah, thank you.
Yep. Yeah, and we always remind people too that any contact from a park counts towards an activation. So on a busy weekend, it's very possible to get an entire successful activation in just by going to a park and making park-to-park contacts with people in other parks. So there's not any specific requirement to actually sit and call CQ. If you can find 10 other people in parks and contact them from the park you're in, that counts. So.
Well, thank you very much, Vance. I appreciate your presentation, you being here with us to talk about POTA, which seems like the hot topic right now, and it seems to be increasing activity every day. Thank you very much for being there.
You bet. Yeah, thanks for inviting me.